Very challenging for us to kind of explain what we're trying to do to investors. The reality is less than 2% of women get investment, and that's not including women of color. And so when you're presenting your ideas in front of a group of a bunch of men, it's really difficult to have a conversation about undergarments without there being laughter or embarrassment and all that stuff, and to take it very seriously. But I feel like we're coming into a space where finally there are a lot of people, a lot of women investors. We're seeing a lot of women of color coming up into the spaces and really investing in things that actually need to be amplified, that actually will make a difference in this world.
Welcome to Curated Conversations, a podcast discussing real-world issues of equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging. I'm your host, Shalisa Jamal, founder of Curated Leadership, an organization that fosters partnerships with individuals and companies to develop their knowledge in the areas of equity and diversity to build inclusive communities. I'm joined here for episode 24 with Nadine Woods from Mayana. Nadine Woods is dedicated to decolonizing fashion with an anti-racist approach, advocating for women's health through her latest movement, Bust the Stigma. Known for demystifying taboo topics, she challenges patriarchal perspectives on bodies, childbirth, and breastfeeding. As a bra innovator with 6 patents, she's created a unique clasp-free bra praised as a scientific wonder disguised as sexy lingerie by the Globe and Mail. Nadine founded Mayana, a Toronto-based social enterprise producing intimates for women from motherhood through menopause, prioritizing well-being and sustainability. Her 100% BIPOC team provides personalized fitting services in her atelier, focusing on inclusivity and customer needs. Nadine is leading a movement towards a more inclusive, sustainable, and health-focused future for women. Welcome, Nadine.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. I'm so excited to have you here today and to be doing this and engaging in more ways.
Yes, definitely. Especially it's been a month. Today's been a month since we did our activation,
Wow.
which is really exciting. I know it feels like it was so long ago, but it's only been a month.
Nadine, tell me about Mayana. What inspired you to create a lingerie line for women?
I mean, I had my own personal experience of looking for undergarments when I had my daughter. I just actually had her, and I thought everything would just go back to normal. Nobody really spoke about that part of recovery. And I noticed that people are either hiding or there's no discussion. And it was really interesting because we are so prepared for our baby's arrival, but we're not really prepared for our recovery. And now I think today we've gotten a little bit better, but there's still such a gap in between the intimate details of what happens to women after they've given birth, or parents after they've given birth. And we don't really talk about all these different scenarios that could potentially happen. And so I wanted to create undergarments that bridge the gap between the functional aspect of what is needed for maternity and then also your style. So the identity piece that's also lost. That's when we first started. And now we've really expanded beyond the postpartum phase. We find that so many of our customers have come to us for other needs that we didn't even think of. And that's how we've gotten to the place where we're supporting people at very difficult or transitional moments of their life, or also giving them space to just actually feel like they're being supported in something that's not really found on the market.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. As a new mom, I can definitely testify to that. You know, we talk about what to put on your registry and what to buy for the baby's nursery, but there's not much about what do we do for self-care after? What do we do for physical care after? I think I personally bought 2 nursing bras, and the fit and style isn't that comfortable, but in that moment, it's like whatever I can get. There's not a lot of research or, like you said, what is functional, what works for you. And I think that is such a missed market and opportunity for learning for a lot of women who are breastfeeding or other aspects of their journey. And speaking about that, I wanted to ask you about how lingerie made for women might differ from lingerie we might see in the mainstream that's created for the male gaze.
Yeah, so there's a huge difference. I mean, I was shocked when I started doing my research before I started this brand. I really wanted to find out what's out there in the market, does it make sense for us to even pursue what we're doing? And when we actually went to all these trade shows, it was very eye-opening to see that the majority of these brands are either run or owned by men. And so that right there kind of explains to you what the expectations are, what the models were looking like, um, what the function was. So a lot of the lingerie pieces were really about how they look and not exactly how they fit or they feel. And so we really went at the reverse. We started off with talking to women who are going through different stages of their life, and then also talking to industry experts, medical practitioners, integrative wellness care people to figure out, okay, these are the things that actually happen after you have specific situations in your life, whether it be C-section, pelvic floor health, all of the above. And then how can we incorporate that into pieces that are actually functional? But then the main piece for us is not losing the identity piece, because we still want to feel beautiful. We still want to look sexy for ourselves, not for other people. And I think that's a really big difference. Whereas when you're coming from the gaze perspective, it's not really thinking about what the woman's needs are. It's more about how she looks. And then we lead into other issues of body dysmorphia and body image and all these other things that feed into a woman's narrative, right?
Yeah, and just talking about that narrative, thinking about what we see in advertising and what type of body image is portrayed as the ideal body image and the types of lingerie that frankly are quite uncomfortable. Whereas I have your bra and I can sleep in it. Sometimes I've had to work out in it because I didn't have a chance to change. I definitely can easily, just pull it down and feed my daughter in it. So it's really so versatile that I don't have to have all these different pieces and have like tight bra lines and
Yeah.
discomfort and all of that. So I really appreciate that.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for saying that. I think a lot of times people are so shocked. I mean, I wish we had recorded people when they came in to do the
Yeah.
fittings for the event, because the number one thing everybody kept saying when they came, oh my gosh, it's so comfortable. It's almost like they're surprised, right?
Yeah.
Because if
Yeah.
it's made with lace, how can it be comfortable? And that's a whole
Right.
other piece that we kind of work on, right?
Yeah. And the breathable cotton too. And I'm just talking about that piece. But you also mentioned this idea of feeling good in the bra. And I just want to go back to what I was saying about nursing bras. Oftentimes, they're gotten better with colors and things like that. But oftentimes they kind of misshape my breasts and they don't look good. You don't feel good. You feel like you're still in that postpartum body or in another
Yeah.
body, even, right? And so that's why I think the lace is so effective and beautiful.
Yes. Okay. That's great. Yeah. I think sometimes we forget that this body image piece, actually, there have been studies, there's not a lot because, they don't do a lot for women. But there have been studies that have shown that body image is actually lowest in childbearing years, and for good
Mhm.
reason, because we're bombarded with all these different messages. In addition to the fact we're trying to navigate this new body that we're not really prepared for, right?
Mhm.
Even if we go back to, let's say, the same size we were before we had our child, the shape of our body is different. So
Right.
there's so many things that we need to kind of take into consideration, and potentially have to try clothes on now. Like you go to
Mm.
your go-to store and you would pick up the same size, but it doesn't fit the same way, right?
Yeah.
So these are the pieces that I think people don't really realize, and they can be very small, but they can have a huge impact on your self-esteem.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And speaking of, we talked about different sizes and shapes and whatnot. You talk about diversity in lingerie, and what exactly does diversity mean to you? And how does it present itself
Mhm.
as a BIPOC CEO and founder of a lingerie company? How are the two connected?
Well, I think that's a really great question, because we are seeing a lot of washing of everything, greenwashing, trying to diversity washing. I think there's a lot of brands out there that will just find as many people as possible to represent their brand, because they know that it is popular, that it is profitable to do so, to appear to be inclusive. But the reality is, when you are making pieces for people, I'll give you an example from our end. We make sure that we fit multiple different body sizes and shapes and different backgrounds of people to get an idea of what their experience is like in our development process. That's the first piece. The second piece is everybody on our team that is decision making are people of color. And that makes a huge impact in the way we decide to produce our pieces and how we source our fabrics, in our sustainability. We're not doing it just for, status to sell and make customers feel like they're buying into something that's great. No, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do. From the top down, bottom up, we want to make sure that everything is consistent. It's not just a marketing ploy, it's actually the way we run our business.
Absolutely. It's part of that fabric, no pun intended, of your business and
Yeah.
of your mission and values, really. And I think that's so important, when it comes to advocacy, when it comes to social justice work. Something that I tell my clients is during times of upheaval, crisis, conflict in the world, it's so important to stay true to your values and mission. And we can set apart those organizations that are doing it for the face value superficially, and the organizations that really have equity, diversity, inclusion, and justice embedded in the fabric of who they are and their mission and values. And so thinking about that, you talk about making lingerie from women for women, from motherhood to menopause. So tell us a little bit more, our listeners, how underwear can be connected to social justice, and a little bit more about how you incorporate that into your sales floor and even into your workshop.
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest things that we found is people in their undergarments will talk a lot about things that they will never talk about in general, right? Because they're so vulnerable. So now all of a sudden you're bringing up things like, oh my gosh, we have things that range from, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like I wasn't able to shave today, which is very superficial, right? That's like kind of touching the surface. To, I actually deal with this severe hernia that has been, I've had multiple surgeries for. My doctor really isn't listening, or I've had this pelvic floor issue for a very long time, and I'm really trying to find underwear that's going to fit a certain way. So now we're having a conversation about the actual issue and the solution that we're providing, as opposed to just the garment. And the issue is that a lot of times people have no clue about, for example, a pelvic floor physiotherapist, or they won't know about how different ways of um, lifestyles can actually change the outcomes of your health condition, because nobody's talking about it. One of the biggest things that we do as well, like I do a lot of talks. I talk at the Baby Time show quite often. And one of my main talks is what is going to happen to my breasts after babies and breastfeeding. And it's so surprising how many people do not know anything about how their breasts work, how they function, and breast health just in general, outside of pleasure or breast cancer or breastfeeding. People don't really understand how to take care of their breasts and what to look for on a daily basis. And so, like, simple things like that can really help to destigmatize a lot of these conditions that women potentially could be having in the future. And it also could act as a preventative measure if we just talk about things. And so I find that undergarments is a really great segue into talking about really intimate topics.
It's like a barber shop, right?
Yes, it is.
I think, you know what, like ever since I walked into your studio, I felt like it was a community, a place of community and a hub. And so I can just imagine, your infectious personality and your just warm, welcome nature, just inviting people to feel safer to actually have these conversations. And then, like you said, giving them that information, providing them those resources. And I think that's a remarkable thing about Mayana that I know I really enjoyed, and how we connected.
Yeah, thank you so much, because we don't even realize like this is just part of who we are. And when we have these conversations with people, we're like, what? Like, no, there's actually this. Let me connect you with this person, or there's this situation, or did you hear about this organization or these people, and where are you located? And so then we start to create community, right? Because now we're having a conversation about it, and we're going to connect you with other people who are, so you don't have to go through whatever situation it is on your own.
Right.
Because a
Absolutely.
lot of times we're going through so many things and it's in silence, right? Not every situation is public for people to see. And some
Absolutely.
people can be dealing with a lot of things and you have no clue.
Absolutely. It reminds me when I went to a bra fitting at a mainstream store, lingerie store, I was in the change room and someone measured me. And it happened that I got a bigger size, I think, because I was menstruating at the time. And so I got home and the bra was so big. And then recently, I remember going to try something on in the change room, and I saw a store associate doing a measuring for a woman right in front of all of us in the line. And I thought, A, it was so impersonal. It might or might not have been embarrassing for the person. I do not know. So that I can't
Hmm.
assume. But it was just out there in the open, so impersonal, so fast, not a lot of care or conversation. And maybe that person did have questions, maybe they didn't. But I know if it was me, I would not be comfortable asking questions or, having my size being read out so loud, like everyone in the line could hear. Um,
Right, right.
and be able to ask those certain questions, like some of the questions, you spoke to and your team when trying on or coming for a fitting is like, how are you going to use this piece of lingerie, this bra? What's your,
Yeah,
lifestyle like? And then also that conversation piece. And I think you hit the nail right on the head. We don't talk about what's going to happen to our breasts after having children. I still don't know a lot of it. I hear from friends and different things like that. But thinking about all of those pieces is I think what's key and what's so special and unique about Mayana. And
yeah.
you were talking about um, some of the issues around motherhood and loving your body. What are some of those issues that new mothers need to speak more openly about, aside from changes in breast size or breast functioning or whatever it might be?
I think it's mostly identity, like the loss of spontaneity, the inability to just pick up and leave whenever you want to. The reality is, like, our partners don't really face if you are in a heterosexual partnership. They don't really face the same situations that you do. I mean, the reality is their body hasn't changed much. And for men specifically, they will never be able to identify with what it's like to be a woman, right? So for them, you can only say, okay, well, I have it. Like, for example, right after you have a C-section, you should not be lifting anything over a certain amount of weight. And I see women walking around with their baby in the car seat all the time. And it's not because they're incapable of doing it. It's because it's as if they've had a major surgery. And nobody talks about C-sections as if it's been a major surgery. But if this was an athlete, you would not be allowing that person to do all the things that they're doing, right?
Yeah.
So even just little things like this, I feel like are a larger
Mhm.
part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I think often, speaking about my experiences, having a 9-month-old, I remember, people just saying, "Oh, you look great." So, you look great.
Right.
And I think my physical body, or I felt pretty good, thankfully. But I think there was all the other things and that ebb and flow for at least the first year, I'm guessing, because I'm already 9 months out, of having a new child and being a new mom. But I think really thinking about postpartum depression, I think is a big thing. Also for me, thinking about that breastfeeding piece, I tell all my girlfriends who are expecting or who have, recently delivered, that the most important thing that I didn't learn about was how to breastfeed, and that the fact that it's not intuitive.
Right.
I suffered a lot of pain about that being a new mom. It's like, you talk about the worrying. It's me researching all night long. What can I do? Buying all the products to try and relieve myself from pain, going to specialist appointments in and around town to kind of figure it out.
Yeah.
And then, recently I was telling my husband I've been pumping every night, even though my daughter is off the night feed. I'm still getting these engorged breasts. And sometimes I just want to go to sleep and have a break. But I'm like, I'm going away for 3 days this weekend. So I need to make sure I pump enough bags, like I think 15 bags for like
Yeah.
5 meals for her and get all the food ready. And then my friend reminded me, but yeah, when you're there, you're going to have to pump 5 times. You're going to get mastitis. So it's like, while I'm going on this fabulous trip and it seems like, I'm getting this break to my husband,
Yeah.
I actually have to take my pumps, take my sponge, take my cloths, take
Right.
my and clean it all and pump 5 times a day and find a spot to do that. Like, I'm not going to completely
Yeah.
enjoy. And then I thought about it and I said, you know how much effort it is to pump? I'm going to take a freezer bag. I'm going to take stuff to like freeze
Yes.
keep these bags. So it's like we're constantly thinking about these issues. It's constantly impacting our bodies physically. And it is very different. It's a very different experience.
Yeah, and it impacts your life. To your point, you
Yeah.
can't just like leave away on this weekend. You have to still continue on with the physical and the
Hmm.
emotional aspect of becoming a mom. And I think the other thing I would really love for people to know is there's more studies coming out showing that it actually takes 2 years to
Hmm.
recover from having a baby,
Hmm.
hormonally, physically, everything. So, when people try to get you to 6 weeks, and no, that's not even close
Yeah.
to what it takes for you
Yeah.
to really recover.
Absolutely. And I think we also have to disrupt the stigma that we have to be super women or super moms. I saw a really
Right,
good video from a Bollywood star actually recently on Instagram talking about this myth of being like a super woman, a super mom, holding it all together, doing it all. It reminds me of what you said about the woman who just had a C-section lifting the car seat. Like, I can do it, we can do it. You can do it, but should you do it? Is it good for your body? And then the
right.
ripple effect that that has on young women and girls, and the way they think that they have to have it all together and do it all and be it all, and that negative cycle, right?
Yeah. And it's just another way to condition us to just kind of move into a patriarchal space again. It's just like go, 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 as opposed to being like, no, this is the time that we're supposed to rest and recover. And
Absolutely.
this is the time where we should be taken care of.
Yes.
Can we set up situations where we can have people doing like a meal train, for example? Like
Absolutely.
that's where the focus should be. Can I get somebody to come in and clean my home?
Hmm.
Maybe it's like a family member or a friend. Don't bring me any gifts. Can you do that for me instead? Like
Yeah.
we have to start shifting the way we think when we visit people's home for the first time. Are we coming there to like we don't expect to be entertained. We should be bringing the food for the people, not
Absolutely.
them, putting food out. Do you know things like this? So it's a really big, and to your point, like you had to do all this research, but realistically, like we shouldn't have to. But in the culture of North America and the West in general, everything is individualistic and nothing is community
Yeah,
focused, which is very colonial in its own mindset.
absolutely.
And it gets people burnt out, it gets people stressed out, it gets people depressed. But if we were in community and we were like when our ancestors were having children, where it was like all the women in the village came, you didn't even hold the baby for potentially 40 days, like in
Yeah,
the sense that you were the only person caring for it, right? So there's a
yeah.
lot of these pieces that I think that people are starting to realize are really important today.
Absolutely. We weren't meant to raise children in isolation. It's meant to be a
No,
community experience, right? And that's something that we really need to think through and disrupt and be kind to ourselves and seek out that support. And oftentimes we don't always ask for that meal train or that break or, I'm coming to visit you. Great.
right.
Can I take a half an hour nap? And I know my friends have always offered
Yeah.
that. When I come over, just go take a nap. And of course, I'm so excited to see them. I don't want to take a nap, but giving ourselves permission to take rest and to take support and help from others, right, is so important.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when we started this call, you mentioned that it's been a month since Mayana started the Bust the Stigma campaign. Tell us about this movement and why did you start it?
That is a great question. I think for us, we were seeing a lot of frustration with both our customer and also ourselves because the reason why we started this business was so that we can have these conversations. We thought, okay, this is going to be great. We're going to be able to help a lot of people. And then here comes social media censorship, not allowing us to share anything. And so it's so ironic because now we're back at square one. Like, okay, we plan to create something that's going to be able to have these conversations and really kind of open some doorways. But guess what? There's a lot of gatekeeping around it. There's a lot of censorship. So we are being prevented from even spreading our message in addition to the already societal stigmas that exist out there. So over time, we kind of paid attention to what was going on, both from a social media perspective, from a marketing perspective, from a conversational perspective, from what our customers are saying. And we're like, we need to do something about this that's really powerful, that's going to make a statement, and it's really going to shift the narrative around this. And that's how Bust the Stigma was born, to come into a space where we can have this conversation on a very public level, where we can have, and we started off with the right to breastfeed. That's what we're launching with because that's a very, what I like to say, low hanging fruit. I mean, it's it's relevant to everyone. People are very familiar with it. It's very polarizing for people. It's something that everybody can do publicly, and people can relate. Even if you have children or not, you understand that breastfeeding is a very controversial issue in the West when it really shouldn't be.
Absolutely. And, when I think about it, when we talk about breastfeeding in public and it being a right, for me, it's just thinking about the way in which this colonial society has over sexualized women, especially racialized women. And, I've seen memes online and conversations. We've had conversations. I've even had
Yeah,
conversations that alluded to the fact that pulling out my breast was equivalent to pulling out a male genitalia, or that it was an act of attention seeking or an act of sexualization, and really to
right,
disrupt that idea that that's these ideas that come from white supremacy and oppressive systems and colonial ideas of the body, really, because as you said, our
right.
ancestors have been doing this from time, of course, breastfeeding from time. That's how we
Yeah,
got our supplements, right? And so
yeah,
it seems so bizarre that we try to control, right, in this environment, to say when we can and when we cannot feed our babies. And when I'm driving,
yeah.
it's like my baby's screaming. It's like I can't imagine when I'm just on a park bench and having to let her cry just to appease other people, right?
Right. And what's so interesting is like the hypersexualization of younger girls or
Mm-hmm.
um, certain body types. That's totally acceptable on social media, on the news, or on TV, in movies, on commercials. So we can see women in bikinis. We can see women doing like really inappropriate things. You know, that's very common and it's almost cheeky and normal. But the minute a woman starts to breastfeed, oh my gosh, that's offensive. Oh my gosh, I don't want to see that, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that that's the piece right there is like, okay, there clearly isn't an issue with you seeing a woman's body. It's based on how you want to see the woman's body, right?
Absolutely.
It's that's that's the piece that we're trying to dismantle here. It's like, okay, breastfeeding is a right. Breastfeeding is how we have survived for thousands of years. How
Mm-hmm.
is that a problem?
Right.
How is that problematic? But what we see on social media of people barely wearing clothes in a very sexualized way, that is
Mm-hmm.
acceptable and that is allowed to go through social media. That's not flagged as inappropriate content. But the minute you have somebody breastfeeding, it's like inappropriate sexual adult content, all this
Mm-hmm.
other inappropriate stuff that's not even relevant to what we're doing. We're feeding our children,
Absolutely.
and that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's
It stems back to being in this male, a society that's male privilege, led through male privilege and male dominated, that we have to lead our lives through that lens. And so it's so important to disrupt that. And I was really excited and fortunate to be part of the day of action at the Blue Jays Junior Jays game with other
yeah.
breastfeeding moms and allies. Can you tell us a little bit more about why Mayana chose the Blue Jays game for the Bust the Stigma Day of Action, and what it meant to you?
Well, a few things. We wanted to have a fun time doing it, right? We didn't want it to be a very serious, like, we're making a statement, and then everybody's gonna be like, look at those feminists over there, just kind of play into the same activist narrative, which is equally as important. Okay. But for the situation that we are in right now, it's not as serious as some of the bigger things that are happening in this world. But it's also very serious enough that it's affecting our livelihood, our ability to go back to work, our ability to go out in public, our ability to be spending time with family and friends, missing out on opportunities because we feel like we need to leave the room. So these are just more nagging things, but they can have a larger impact, right? So we thought, why not have do something in a way that's really fun and exciting and that's going to make people feel like this is something different and I want to participate, and it's also really an easy way to get allies on board. Like how many people came with their partners and hey, it's a Jays game, right? Like against the Dodgers too, like the one of the biggest teams in the league. Why not? I would love to go see the game and just have fun and just make it a very normal thing. And even though we're an undergarment brand, we weren't really focused on showing women in lingerie. That's not what we were about. We were just showing you how you use your pieces in everyday life. And it's just a normal occurrence, right? You're going out with your friends or you're hanging out with people just to have a good time, not and doing something that comes natural really shouldn't be a statement, but here we are, and here it is. It becomes a statement.
Absolutely. I just love that line, right? Something we do normally and it's become a
Yeah.
statement. It's just what our society is sort of going in the wrong direction here when we think about that.
Yeah, we actually even had a mom who's like, I breastfeed everywhere. I don't really care. But she's like, it's only until I saw that post, one of the posts that went up for us and in one of the larger networks, and she saw the comments. She's like, oh wow, this really is an issue. I didn't even realize it because I had
Hmm.
not been exposed to it, and I
Hmm.
really don't care. But now I'm like aware of it, and when I see people looking at me, I'm thinking, oh, that's it's probably because they're uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you talk about this idea of a mother's right to breastfeed in public, but also about this very ignorance or misunderstanding that comes with breastfeeding in public. Can you tell us a little bit about the laws and how breastfeeding mothers are supported
Mm.
by it? Because I'll tell you honestly, I don't think my partner knew that we could breastfeed in public, like that it was a human right. I don't think he thought it wasn't, but I don't think it was activated that, hey, this is okay. And I said, well, it's okay
Uh-huh.
for men and women and gender diverse folks to go topless. So why would it be any different just to give your baby some lunch?
I know, but that's what's so interesting too, right? I think a lot of people were nervous going to the game, even my partner, and he's like, I was kind of nervous. I'm not going to lie. I don't know how people would react or what they would say to us. And it's interesting that we even have to think that this even legal? Like that's just how wild the situation is. Like, why do we even have to think about this being an issue in terms of bringing the law into it so that people can't harass us? So essentially, the way the law works in Ontario specifically, it is a legal right to breastfeed all over North America, so all over the United States and Canada. In Toronto specifically, they have it listed on their Toronto website that breastfeeding and chest feeding parents have the right to breastfeed anywhere, and no one has the right to tell them to move or cover up. That is illegal. That is a form of discrimination. The issue that we're facing and that we're hoping to tackle is just to kind of create some more clarity around that because there's no recourse really um, to enact that law. There's no way to really kind of prove it. There's no way to have something done efficiently or on the spot to kind of discourage the perpetuation of discrimination. So it actually makes it inaccessible for somebody who is experiencing discrimination to get some type of accountability or recourse because the process takes forever. It's very strenuous. You have to be able to navigate the law. You have to see if the Human Rights Tribunal will even consider taking your case to begin
Right.
with. That's like a lot for
Yeah, there's no
somebody
like
to go through
report
just
line, like no 24-hour hotline to report or
no, there's nothing like as if, oh, you don't park there, you get a ticket immediately. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like there's just nothing that's like that simple. And if people were starting to do that, the culture would shift immediately. People would be like, oh, it actually is wrong. And there wouldn't be any questions in anybody's mind whether they can or cannot talk to somebody because they would know right away, actually, I'm not allowed to say anything to that person. Whether, it doesn't matter how I feel, it's actually illegal for me to tell that person to leave my restaurant or don't breastfeed right here. Right. And so that'll start to get people's minds thinking like, oh, maybe my thinking is very outdated and backwards.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So yeah.
Yeah, the stairs are the worst because there are people who prefer private spaces. That's totally fine, and I think there should be
Yeah.
private spaces for that. Sometimes I like a comfy chair. Like I was at a department store the other day, and they had the accessibility change room, and so they gave that to me with my stroller. And Mila started getting fussy, and there was this huge, comfy, clean armchair. I was like, "This is perfect. We're gonna stop trying on clothes, and we're gonna feed Mila." And then Sean came to get her. So
Yeah.
I loved that, and so I think that should be definitely woven into retail spaces and public spaces, and we should also be allowed to just whip it out and feed our babies wherever without stares that this is something that's foreign to folks, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And so, how do folks listening here? How can they learn more and support the Bust the Stigma campaign?
Yeah. So they can go to bustthestigma.com. We have a petition there that we're currently circulating. Our goal
Okay.
is to get at least 10,000 signatures so that Parliament starts to take this really
We're
seriously.
going to get you
Because
there.
right now it's just Yeah, right now it's just like the elephant in the room, right? We all kind of experience it. We've kind of accepted this is the reality of motherhood, but then nothing really happens. And then
Mhm,
what ends up happening is because parents have children and they may have multiple children. But the reality is it's a very long part of your life, but it's also very short,
mhm,
right? So then after a year and a half,
mhm,
now you're dealing with other issues, like trying to figure out where you're putting your kid in school or like all these other things. And then you're bombarded with a host of other things that you're dealing with that it's really hard. You're like, okay, that phase of my life is done. Am I going to continue to pursue that? And then the cycle begins all over again. So our goal is to stop it in its tracks by getting
mhm,
people to get on board and being like, this is a serious issue. This has been happening for decades and generations, and we want it to stop.
mhm. Absolutely. And I think that's like a great way to think about it because sometimes these issues, when I think about allyship and authentic allyship, sometimes when it's of self interest to us, we are all in it and we're advocating for it. But just to remember for both people who are breastfeeding and people who are supporting people who are breastfeeding to continue this work, right? Beyond your experience. So now tell me
Yeah.
more about Mayana and what's on the horizon for Mayana.
Well, we are really excited about the fact that we have gone through this whole rebrand in the sense that the rebrand is really speaking to who we are. We're more vocal about those pieces. Some of the pieces when we first started, we're a very small team, we're self-owned. I hate the term bootstrapped, but we are. And that was for a multitude of reasons. It was very challenging for us to kind of explain what we're trying to do to investors. The reality is less than 2% of women get investment, and that's not including women of color. And so when you're presenting your ideas in front of a bunch of men, it's really difficult to have a conversation about undergarments without there being laughter or embarrassment and all that stuff, and to take it very seriously, right? But I feel like we're coming into a space where finally there are a lot of people, a lot of women investors. We're seeing a lot of women of color coming up into the spaces and really investing in things that actually need to be amplified, that actually will make a difference in this world, and not just focus on the money that they're going to make, which is absolutely important, but more so the impact that this business is going to have. And a lot of these businesses today, they make money, but that's it. The buck stops there. They're literally making money for the investor at the expense of the exploitation of people and the planet. And that's not what we're about. And so also looking at how industries are catching up with this, right? We have ESG is now one of the biggest things, but ESG was really only formed because of the economic impact it was having on their business to have such terrible publicity about their bad business practices, right? That's the only way that they were starting to care about the environment, about social, about governance, about all the things that are happening in their business. So I think that the world is getting into a position and in a place where they're finally opening up to understanding that we can't live like this. People are burning out. People are upset. People are not doing well right now. And the things that really reduce a lot of crime, a lot of depression, a lot of mental health issues is community, spending time with one another, really supporting one another, slowing things down. And people are looking for that now. People are
Mhm,
willing to sacrifice certain things like having nicer things or whatever. Because they're not willing to go to workspaces that are toxic anymore. They're not willing to sacrifice themselves anymore. So I feel like for us as a brand, we're poised to be in a really good position now where people understand all of that. We were ahead of our time when we first
mhm.
started. And our goal is to really grow beyond where we are. We do see ourselves being a global brand and kind of creating this narrative around what it's like to run a really powerful business that is diverse in its values and its people, and bring more solutions to the market for people who are continuously left out of the conversation.
Absolutely. And I think your commitment and your mission and values and sticking to them is very commendable, right? In a time when there is a lot of competition, a lot of performative allies. You know,
Yeah.
it's really great that you are, you know, holding tight to your mission and being selective about who you engage with and how you get your funding and remaining sustainable. I think those are very invaluable assets, and I really appreciate all of that. Is there anything
Thank you.
that you want to share that I didn't ask you about Mayana or about Bust the Stigma that you want to share?
Um, I would just say I think the number one thing is help us spread the word. We are out here to help people, to make change, to be part of your life, and we would love for people to know we don't want to be the best kept secret anymore. We want to be well known, and so we can continue helping as many people as possible.
Absolutely. So put a lot of the notes in the show notes and the links. And as we come to the end of our conversation, can you tell me, as a founder, as a woman, as an entrepreneur, tell me a little bit about what brings you joy, even as a mother, of course, and a community builder.
You know, what I would say what brings me joy is when I see people kind of come into this awareness of themselves, where they're like literally breaking away from the conditioning that we've had our entire life. So, for example, if somebody comes in, the number one thing they say is like, "Oh my God, I feel like myself again." And that to me is exactly why we're doing what we're doing. The emails that we get from people, the gratitude, all of those pieces is what keeps us going. It is very challenging right now to be a business owner, but honestly, it's like the community and the impact that we're making is what brings us such joy when times are very challenging. And it's like, this is why we're doing what we're doing, right? So that's one of the biggest things I would say. And then obviously the impact that it has, I see on my daughter when she's writing essays, when she's talking to people, like the way she speaks. Sometimes you think your kids are not listening, but they totally are. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of her. And then my friends are like, I'm so confused. She's your kid. I don't understand what you think. But it's really interesting. Actually, my daughter did a whole essay, and I'm very proud of it. She's in grade 9, and she was asked to do an essay in English, and the essay was about systemic racism. And they weren't supposed to write an essay. They were actually supposed to create a creative piece of writing that shows that they understand systemic racism. And my daughter chose to write on being a Black woman in the workplace. And she talked about pay equity and pay transparency. And she is in grade 9. These are not things that we
Wow.
even knew about, right?
No.
And this is even language that was created at that time. And she did such a fantastic job. She got 100%.
Woo.
The page was like, yeah, it was like a page and a half long. It was a short story. She loves reading, so it was a short story. She's in an all French school, so English is like really for her, like the grammar, sentence structure, all that stuff. So for her, it was really. She sent it to me, and she's like, "I got 100%. I'd love for you to read it. Tell me what you think." And when I read it, I was blown away. I was like, "Who? Oh my gosh, this is amazing!"
Yeah.
Right? And so I think it's so interesting, like the work that we do. I don't feel like it's work. I feel like we're coming here, we're all working together towards one common goal, and it affects everybody. It's all interconnected. And I think
Mhm.
once you start realizing that, your life becomes so much more meaningful as opposed to compartmentalized. Like, this is my
Absolutely.
family, this is my work, this is my, and if you have to live like that, that's where it becomes really challenging for people, right?
Absolutely. And I think you definitely have succeeded in creating a warm, kind of soulful, authentic space. I know immediately when I walked in, I felt like I could be myself. It wasn't going to be back talked or, sneering on the end of, on the other side.
Oh my
When
gosh,
I go into stores, sometimes I'm like, is this person saying this? I could be my authentic self. It was so warm.
that is true. Yeah.
It was so
Yeah.
warm. I think within maybe a minute or two, I just like blabbed my whole life to you, vice versa. So, congratulations on creating that community within the workshop of Mayana. I love that I could see the sewing machines as I'm doing my fitting and just the smiles on your faces. It really felt like a sisterhood. So I want to thank you for that experience. It was really
Oh,
transformational for me to see that camaraderie, so thank you for that.
oh my pleasure. Thank you so much for saying that. That means everything to us. It means that we're doing something right, and you're feeling it when you come in without even knowing us really. I mean, at that time, right? You didn't really
Yeah,
know us, and so that speaks volumes. Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So before we end today, where can folks find you and learn more about you, both physically in your storefront as well as online?
Yeah, so our actual storefront is in the junction of Toronto. So we're not deep in the city. We've got free parking. You don't have to worry about all the traffic. That's a great piece. So we're in the West End for those of you who are in the West End. But we have people coming from all over, which is lovely. So if you are in the area, please do come and visit us. We do fittings here directly. We have our on-site boutique. And then, of course, as Shalisa, you mentioned, we produce everything in-house. So that's really a treat to see it all made in Toronto. It's also very unique. It's not something that we see much of anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can find us at Mayana.co, which is our new website. And then, of course, through the bustthestigma.com campaign, because it leads us to the website as well. We're always on Instagram, so check us out there. That's a great way to get a hold of us as well.
Absolutely. Well, we'll put all of this in our show notes. Thank you so much, Nadine, for your time and generosity today. I really hope that we get to connect and work together in future endeavors, and wishing you all the very best today to continue to bust the stigma. So folks listening, please make sure you check out the website and the links in our bio and sign the petition.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nadine, for joining me today. And thanks again to our listeners for tuning into this episode of Curated Conversations. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review the podcast. Subscribe at our website, curatedleadership.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for tuning in to Curated Conversations, the podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and share this episode. Subscribe to our podcast or listen to past episodes at curatedleadership.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Curated Leadership, visit us at Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Curated Leadership. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Curated Conversations.